So, hey, folks, thanks for tuning into the BAMP podcast. I am your host, Mike Lafferty, and here is our cheesy introduction. That assures you you're listening to a high quality, a high production values podcast, ethically sourced, made from the finest farm to table geeky conversations. And with me today, let me introduce my co host first before I forget, because I'm very excited about our guest, Mr. Ross Watson, well known RPG developer. Ross, what's going to give us a quick overview of your credentials before we?
Well, sure. I've been in the game industry for about 20 years. I've worked on a bunch of products, including Star Wars: Age of the Empire, all the Warhammer 40K role-playing game lines, and Torg Eternity. And I'm a huge fan of our two guests today.
Yep, we have Michael Jan Friedman and Robert. Do you prefer Robert or Bob Greenberger?
Are you going to pay me? I don't care then.
All right, fair enough. Michael Jan Friedman, why your credentials, your credits are so long and so legendary? Why don't you give the audience a brief summary so they'll know who you are?
Sure. I've written 80 books exactly. Almost half of those are in the Star Trek universe somewhere. I've also written for Predator and Aliens and DC superhero, Marvel superhero franchises, and others. Almost 200 comic books, mostly for DC, but also for Marvel. I co-wrote the story for one of the Voyager episodes, and worked with Bob behind the scenes on After Earth, the movie, the Will Smith, Jaden Smith movie. And I've done some audio, worked a little bit in cable television and radio. So there you have it.
All right, cool. Sorry, it took me, things slowed down there for a second. Robert, same question to you, sir.
Much like Mike, I've been in the publishing business since 1980, starting at Starlog Press, where I created Comic Scene magazine. Went on to 16 years at DC, a year at Marvel, 4 more years at DC, year and a half at Weekly World News. As a freelance writer, I've done a lot of the same sort of stuff as Mike, a lot of it in collaboration with Mike. I've edited him on the Star Trek Next Generation comic for DC. We've caused a lot of mayhem and confusion together, with, either together or with Peter David stirring the pot. We are both co-founders of Crazy 8 Press, which is a self-publishing hub that Mike was really the founder of. And these days, I'm also a high school English teacher.
Wow.
So going from, DC, Marvel, Weekly World News, were those leading you up to the chaos and uncertainty of working with high schoolers?
Certainly Weekly World News, because, you got to see it to believe it.
That boy.
I actually have also taught high school.
Wow.
Did that for 15 years with kids who were at a school where the students were sent to us by the courts.
Oh, what was that like?
Spent a lot of time on the floor, breaking up fights. And I'd forgotten, as an adult, I'd forgotten how many fights wind up on the floor, but I was reminded.
Yeah, it seems like, especially high school fights, almost all of them, after about 5 seconds, wind up as wrestling matches.
Right.
So, well, hey, across your guys' storied careers, do you have one highlight, one particular story you like to tell when you're at, having a drink at a con, afterwards with other professionals?
A lot of it depends upon the circumstances, because either they've been, a lot of these people I hang out with, they were there when these things happened, so it's not worth bringing up. I always am fond of the story of the actress PJ Souls, who was in Stripes and Halloween and Private Benjamin. I had interviewed her for Fangoria, and we talked about Rock and Roll High School and Halloween and such. And after the magazine came out, she showed up at the Starlog offices one day to take me out.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
At the time, she was married to Dennis Quaid at the time, and he had been brought into town to promote the night the lights went out in Georgia, and she was in town promoting, I think it was Stripes. He had picked up a high school buddy of his, and she had no one to hang out with. So in the limo provided by Columbia Pictures, she stopped at Starlog to come get me so we can go out and have pizza in Greenwich Village.
That's
Nice.
pretty cool.
And we spent the afternoon together, and it was kind of, surreal.
You know, a lot of people have tried to take me out as well, Bob, but not in the same meaning of the phrase. My favorite story is when I was working on my very first Star Trek book. It was called Double Double, and it took off from the original series episode "What a Little Girl's Made of," and in it, because it was an original series book and it was my first, I had 11 pages of Chekhov dialogue in there, here and there. And one of the notes I got was to take out Chekhov from the book and put in this other character, DeSoto. And I'm thinking, why would I have to do that? So we sent a message back to Paramount, to Gene Roddenberry's office, and said, so why do you want us to take Chekhov out of the book? And they said, well, look at your star date. Now, Gene himself had sent a memo to Pocketbooks saying, pay no attention to the star dates. We made them up as we were going along. Don't worry about them. But this one functionary in Gene's office had decided that the star dates were meaningful, and we had to observe them. There you go. That's the book. So we sent back a message, and this is over the course of like a week, because they would only communicate via fax, and only once a day. So we sent back a message. So we can take out 11 pages of Chekhov, or we can change the star date. And we got a message back saying, yeah. We changed exactly one numeral and preserved our 11 pages of Chekhov dialogue.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to mention, Bob, when I was in grade school, my favorite magazine was Starlog. I remember I used to read that every month. I get it at the grocery store near my house.
Me too.
And yeah, I remember reading Carrie O'Quinn's editorials. I remember the little flame wars in the letters column about Carrie thought that E.T. was science fantasy, not science fiction. So he didn't want it nominated for certain awards, and it made there was those kind of flare-ups every few months over something. But
well, Carrie was a man of very passionate convictions, no question about it.
What was it like working there? Was that a lot of fun, or was it more of a just?
I was just out of college, so I'm 22 years old. I'm brought over to Starlog, this magazine I had been reading since the first issue, and I was assigned to Fangoria, so I was managing editor there, and it was me and Bob Martin, and next door was Howard Zimmerman and Sue Adamo, and it was like we were these two offices putting out these magazines, but everybody pitched in to help everybody else's magazine, so that I'm learning how mechanicals are put together, before digital pre-press existed, and having to deal with publicists and getting slides that we could then turn into our photography. There was so much about the magazine publishing operation that I learned about, as well as how to deal with freelancers and how to do, write on deadline. It was an amazing training ground. And it was a lot of fun because it was the right subject matter.
So you were working back in the days of wax for layout, right? Wax and rulers and light tables. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Wow. Spaceport.
Yeah. When I was doing newspaper work back in the old days, that's how we were doing things.
Yeah. If I'm allowed to fanboy out a little bit, I have to say this one thing, because I was born in 1975. I didn't really enjoy comics, or really wasn't into comics, until two things happened. In 1985, I was 10 years old, and I saw Crisis on Infinite Earths and Who's Who, and those two things changed my whole life.
You're welcome.
They were so good. Oh my God. Yeah. Blew me away. And I, to this day, that's how I tell people I got into comics, because of that.
Thanks. I mean, they were tremendous projects to work on, and again, being hired over at DC to work on them, it meant I was working with Len Wein and Marv Wolfman. By that point, serious veterans who had so much knowledge, and they were willing to teach me how it all worked. And they appreciated my passion, and they also appreciated my encyclopedic memory, because neither one were very good about that. So that helped tremendously, and it was, again, one of these amazing experiences.
You need that memory on Crisis too.
Absolutely.
For something like that. Oh my gosh, that's huge.
I was thinking the other day, I was watching the Doctor Strange sequel. And I was like, we're not going to get Crisis on Infinite Earths as a movie for probably 10, 15 years, maybe longer, until they can release it.
Walter Hamada, who is the Warner Brothers executive overseeing the DC films, that actually was on his agenda to do a Crisis film sooner than later, given all the elements that the film universe was involved in. And then the new management came in with the Warner Discovery merger. So apparently that's on the shelf. So I don't know if you'll ever see it.
Yeah. Well, that's how things go in Hollywood, right? That's show business.
Yeah, for sure. I have a question for Michael, if you don't mind. So one of the things, I mean, you guys are both just huge titans in Star Trek. There's no question about it. But you worked with a particular person that I find really fascinating. You get to do the Book of Kahless with John M. Ford, the late John M. Ford. Well, what was that like?
Well, we didn't work together. We both our books appeared in a compendium.
Okay.
Kind of a thing, a program that was at Pocket Books, where they took two books that had a common thread and put them together and marketed them for like $10 with they were called signature editions. So they had templates of our signatures. So we appeared in the same book, which I'm very happy about, but I didn't actually get to work with him. I actually met him probably back around 85, 86 at a Boston convention. And he was a great guy, but I'm sorry.
I said he was.
Yeah, but I didn't actually get to work with him.
Okay. Well, you've certainly written the heck out of Klingons and Federation throughout your career. So I would say you've had as big an impact, which is pretty impressive. So I'm just so psyched. Anyway, Michael, save me. Mike Lafferty.
Oh, okay. Well, hey, since we're talking to Mr. Friedman, let me pull up the Blaster Bolts issue that had his story in it, and get us marginally back on topic. This cover is by our friend Jacob Blackman. It turned out, I think, really well. This was Outlaw. The Blaster Bolts is a zine we've been running here in 2022. It's sort of a combination of role-playing game content and fiction. And I'm not sure how I was lucky enough to get Bob and Mike to write for me, but somehow that happened. And they both embraced the sci-fi Western theme really strongly. And Mike, this was your story, Outlaw, and I've gotten a lot of compliments from readers about this. It was a big hit. Could you tell us a little bit about the story? And
Sure. When we originally talked about me doing the story for the zine, I hadn't done a space Western previously. And I said, so what is it about Westerns that I like the most, that I definitely want to put into this story? And I decided the outlaw, the conceit of the outlaw had to go into that. I definitely wanted to show a space Western version of a train robbery, that kind of thing. And then I'm also, and I have been interested for most of my life in indigenous peoples. And I said, well, this planet's going to have an indigenous species, and they're going to be involved in it too. So once I had those two components, I said, how can I mix them together? And my method of storytelling is sort of peeling back the onion. So we started out with an outlaw band and maybe some factions within it. And then I started peeling back the onion until you realize that what's going on is not what you thought was originally going on, and maybe not even what you thought was going on 5 pages ago. So that was sort of my method of getting into it.
Well, it was a great story. It really worked out. And once again, I'm in awe that I got you guys to write for me. So thanks again for taking the time for that.
I have to tell you, it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. You made it very easy, and I would do it again.
You heard it here, folks.
Well, we are starting slow planning on volume 2. And Bob, this is the cover for your book, The Retirement of Harry Crane, which was also. Will you tell us a little bit about the story?
Sure. I was flattered to get the invitation, and I was sitting there, for quite a while, struggling to come up with a story. So one night, while my wife and I were on vacation, we had dinner, and we started talking and spitballing ideas, and it occurred to me that a lot of the elements of what made a good Western, was out in the frontier and the lone gunman, and a lot of that could apply to the frontier of colonization in space. And it occurred to me that the further away from Earth you got, the more limited your interactions with other colonies were going to be. So I was starting to imagine, all right, so we've got this lawman, and what would happen to him when he was done being the lawman? What would the life he have? And where, is he going to find companionship? And then I was reminded of the Harry Chapin song, Mail Order Annie, where he sent away for a frontier bride, came up on the train station, and the whole song is about their meeting at the station, getting to know one another. And I used that as the character from the song is named Harry Crane. So I stole that and imagined what would happen if a woman from another colony was brought over in an arranged marriage to this guy trying to give up being the sheriff, and things happen.
Just when I think I'm out, they pull me back in.
No, it was a fun piece, and like I said, I don't want to repeat myself, but I was really flattered to have both you guys in there. So thank you so much. I guess this is the point of the show where we awkwardly segue to talking about the Kickstarter that's still running. So
if you want to know more about these gentlemen's stories, you can find it at the Blaster Bolts Kickstarter,
which is running right now, and we are funded. And so this is a good time to jump on the bandwagon. We've got 6 days left. Had a very low goal. Go ahead, sir.
These guys are just trying to put the stories together in a lovely ebook collection, which certainly would look good on your digital shelf. I certainly would like to be able to read all the others in one sitting. I haven't read Mike's yet, for example.
I have to tell you, the artwork, I just saw a communication from Jacob, who did the artwork.
That's right.
But I have to tell you, he did a great job. The artwork here is really second to none. Some of those covers, Bob's cover was great.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those covers are really, really tremendous. And so it's a well packaged, handsome. There you go, handsome collection. And from what I've seen, aside from my story, very well written.
Yeah, we've been trying to figure out stretch goals. Now that we've met goal. Was actually talking to a friend, a mutual acquaintance of you guys, Ron Mars, who actually introduced me to you guys, and I was trying to get him interested in doing a stretch goal story. And Ron's very busy. It might not happen, but if you happen to talk to him, he might put a bug in his ear about it. But so yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Once again, really appreciate you guys writing for us. And any ideas for volume 2? Keep them in the back of your mind. Hopefully, we'll be looking at that 2023 or some kind of time frame like that.
Well, that sounds excellent.
Now that I've got the bug, I hadn't thought about writing space westerns before, but now every third or fourth story that occurs to me is like a space western. I can't get rid of it. I can't quit it. But one thing about these Kickstarters is they allow writers and publishers, small publishers, to make direct connections to their readers. the reason that we put Crazy 8 Press together, for instance, in the first place, was to preserve that relationship between reader and writer. Everything else is superfluous, really. Um, and when we started about 12 years ago, right about then, Borders went out of business, and everybody was worried about, well, publishing in general and science fiction in particular, is it still going to be around? After all that time and all that legacy, are we still going to be able to bring science fiction from writer to reader? And what you're doing in this Kickstarter is along the same lines. You're preserving that connection, which is a sacred connection, and you're in doing so, you're paying tribute to all the great science fiction writers and editors who came before you.
And the other thing, Mike, is Blaster Bolts is your passion project, and you've been able to reach a number of authors, including me and Mike, to share your passion and contribute to it and help you make your project a reality. And Mike and I have both been very blessed with our anthologies at Crazy 8 Press, where we've had these passion ideas and we've been able to get like-minded people to join us. And through Kickstarter, we've been able to produce these books and maintain this connection. So, that's one of the beauties of passion, small press, and Kickstarter.
Yeah, it's we live in an interesting time where you don't need the old gatekeepers or the old publishing houses. You can really reach out to the audience directly through tools like that.
And the kind of thing you're publishing is different as well. First of all, publishers never really liked publishing anthologies because they never sold as well as novels. But on the internet, they do fine. Something like a space western anthology or even a space western novel would be a tough sell to a traditional publisher. But there's plenty of demand for it, plenty of interest, and a small press can take advantage of it.
Well, anthologies are great. When I was a kid, I got introduced to all kinds of stuff through Isaac Asimov Presents. That was a series of anthologies. I read all the Thieves World books. Those were anthologies. That's how I got an appreciation for wider approaches to storytelling. So I think supporting anthologies makes perfect sense, at least from the standpoint of a fan. Maybe not
I
published.
think the short story is probably the best. Yeah, here's we have over 70 titles at Crazy 8 Press.
Yeah, the top 5 are the most current.
But the short story is really the best showcase for science fiction. There have been some great science fiction novels, obviously, and there will continue to be. But the science fiction concept can usually be expressed in the form of a short story, and you get more bang for your buck. So reading those anthologies, also I did the same thing as a kid, was really inspirational, and I always felt like that was the best foot forward for science fiction. When I started out, I couldn't write short stories. All I could write were novels, and people kept saying, you're like ass backwards. Most people start off with short stories and they work their way up to novels. I worked my way down to short stories.
I used to be in a writing group with a guy who was doing screenplays. He had sold a few action movies back in the 90s, and he was like, why are you killing yourself writing short stories, man? There's no money there. There's no glory there. You should write novels or screenplays. You know how much money I make bad screenplays don't get produced? And I don't know. I spent years as a journalist, and I was got hammered into me that there's no idea you can't express perfectly in 5,000 words or less. So,
right.
But I wanted to call out.
Also, what was I going to say? There are guys who make a great living writing screenplays that no one ever sees.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, if you're a writer, you want to connect with the reader. I've often said that I love the idea of writing screenplays, but if that were to be my fate, I don't think I'd be very happy.
If you want, I can definitely give you guys a good review because I have read Sir Propos of Nothing, and that is a great book. So I would definitely recommend anybody who wants to check out some great fiction.
Well, that's one
Crazy Eight's got it.
I mean, that's a great story about how Crazy Eight connects with the readership. Peter did the trilogy of Sir Apropos books for Pocket Books, and when he had another fourth book, they weren't interested anymore, and his fans kept asking, "Where's more?" So he was able to get the rights back for Pocket Books, and we put him out, and he got to write the fourth book in the set.
Yeah, you were just showing Phenomenons. That's one of our current anthologies. I'm sending out the first volume now. I have an office full of boxes and books, and they're going out.
Nice.
But and we kickstarted recently. We kickstarted the second volume, so that's in the process of being written right now. The very early stages of that process. Yeah, so we do anthologies, and also we do original work. And what it has in common, Mike, with what you're doing is that these are our closest held and most authentic visions, right? These are the things that we would really love to read if we weren't writing them. And that means a lot. I think that comes out in the final product. You see that passion, that vision, that dedication, that you come to understand. It's not just the paycheck. That's my phone going off. Jeez.
Okay. I'm not calling you.
You're not. Well,
no.
Well, Bob, why don't you call me?
All right. Well, hey, we haven't said it out loud yet, but that's Crazy 8 Press, and that's with the 8 as a number. You can check out everything that they've been doing there. I think last time we had you on, Mike, you were talking about the Kickstarter you were doing for the latest Phenomenons book. So next,
yeah.
I wanted to mention this one. We're right about at the end of the show, but this Peter David book reminds me of the Geeky Canterbury Tales.
Exactly.
Yeah, you've got a bunch of fans snowed in at a convention, and they just start telling stories in the hotel bar. It sounds like a really cool idea.
Well, it actually happened at a convention called Farpoint about 12 winters ago, and about 2 winters ago at the Farpoint convention, I think it was, we were talking about how Crazy 8 Press literally can create a project out of thin air, and somehow in the conversation Peter created this concept, and obviously all the Crazy 8 Press authors were contributing, and then Peter opened it up, and I think he's got like 30 different stories in it.
Close to 40.
Oh wow.
Close to 40 different stories.
The man's a machine.
And each story represents a fandom, because the idea is that at this convention where they're snowed in, at this imaginary convention, which echoes the actual situation Bob described, everybody sitting at the bar represents a different fandom, and there's a Star Wars fandom, Star Trek fandom, Doctor Who, and my story was about baseball fandom, because I'm a baseball fan, as Bob is, and this was an opportunity to do something that wasn't science fiction or fantasy, but scratched my baseball itch.
And in my case, I actually had the House Stark versus the Imperial Stormtroopers fighting over the one snow shovel to dig out the fans at the convention.
By the way, it was an actual thing. There was a guy who's become a friend of ours, a guy named Blair, who was in charge of the only snow shovel.
Well, not that Blair was in charge. No, the hotel had a single snow shovel. Because they had not encountered a blizzard like this. They had a little Bobcat machine, that they were driving to dig everybody out. But to dig out your individual car, you had to sign up on a waiting list to get the one shovel.
Wow.
And that's
And after the convention, Blair took possession of it, bought it from the hotel, and got everybody to autograph it.
Nice.
right. So now it's like a holy relic.
There you go.
There's this one shovel, and it's been signed by so many people there. Not just writers, but who is there? Bob
Aaron Gray.
Aaron
Oh.
Gray.
You have my attention.
Shimmerman.
Right? The Buck Rogers.
Gil Gerard.
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 Yeah.
Nice.
So we have this is legendary, and somehow we turned it into an anthology. Go figure.
No, that's great. It's a great story. I love that kind of behind the scenes stuff.
I'll have to check that out. Well, hey, I could talk to you guys for another hour. Unfortunately, I have a soul-crushing day job on this laptop to my right that I need to go indulge in so I can pay the bills. But,
I resume my not quite soul-crushing day job tomorrow, so I sympathize with you.
Thank you. Once again, folks, you can check out Blaster Bolts on Kickstarter. If you literally just Google Blaster Bolts Kickstarter, it'll be one of the first results or two. And we have 6 days left, and we're scrambling to try to find stretch goals. If you have any ideas or authors you'd like to see, let us know, and we'll reach out to them. Bob and Mike, thanks once again for showing up, and thanks again for writing for me. Really been a pleasure having you guys in the book.
Sure. My pleasure, really.
And Ross, once again, nice to have you on the show. Appreciate you co-hosting.
Thanks, anytime. Especially when I get to meet guys like these. These are my heroes down here. So
cool. All right, hey, thanks everybody for checking out the Banff podcast, and we will catch you next time.